Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. Welcome to the Gamey Daddy channel. So I find myself again in this position where I'm probably going to be on the optimistic side of the Division 2. Now, I'm a Division fan, but at the same time, I'm not necessarily blinded to the faults of this game. And if you ask the other content creators that, discuss with me personally, they will tell you that I have, some of my strongest criticisms of the game. But a while ago, especially when this game was going through its much more terrible time in March around the Warlords of New York, I took it upon myself to be the only or one of the only voices that will speak about the positive aspects of the game, but will also give fair criticism wherever it was deserved. So if you notice, I've made a series of videos that has critiqued the game, talked about possible improvements, and talked about aspects of the game that are actually pretty good. Now, this has probably cost me a lot of the audience, but to be very fair, there are enough voices that are discussing the difficult and the broken aspects of this game. I don't want to be another negative voice to Tom Clancy's The Division 2, which has, largely been a huge part of my presence on YouTube. Not because, of that mainly, but because there are, like I said, enough voices, enough creators that talk about the aspects of this game that need to be fixed. However the presentation is, that is left to you as the audience members to judge. Now, today is the 10th of September, and so we're going to jump into all that we got to see today. So Ubisoft had the Forward event, which in many cases, there were very few things that were being, awaited on from the larger, action game shooter community. And it seemed like not all of that was actually fulfilled, because I think Ubisoft is probably taking their time before they drop those fan service style games. Splinter Cell. But they did talk about For Honor, which actually has a big community, for those of you who may not know. But one of the really cool things was Yannick introduced not only the reveal date or the release date, for the Summit mode, which is a PvE mode coming to the Division 2, but the fact that the Division 2 will be backward compatible on next-gen consoles. So what that means, I think, is you're going to be able to play the Division 2 in or on your Xbox Series X or S and your PlayStation 5. Now, we note that the community, was actually barraging the developers, asking them for this functionality if it was going to be a thing in one form or the other. But it seemed like they blew it off. I remember people saying, we asked them, they said there was not going to be any plans for, coming to the next generation and all that stuff. It was just kind of talk across the community. I never really got any official source that there wasn't going to be any of this. And one thing I know about Massive is usually they do not say no to ideas or possible upcoming futures. They usually use statements like, we have no plans for, and I'll give you a good example. I remember one time the Division 2 had just, initially released, and one of their content, community managers, his name was Amper, his nickname's Amper Camper, he's now moved on to another studio, was playing the game, and I asked him in a Twitch chat, I said, do you guys, plan on, releasing survival in the Division 2? And he said, we don't have any plans, or we haven't had any discussions about releasing a survival mode. We just, think the survival mode in Division 1 is still available and players can play that. It was a very vague, open-ended statement, and he made it directly at me, at my question in chat. And I've noticed the trend that these developers usually say we don't have any plans for, or it's not something that we're planning for. We don't have any word on that. It's not something that we're gonna, that we have on the table right now. Or they'll say maybe in the future, but for now, this is what we have. They almost never want to talk about things that are future plans. And that's how they've really, kind of conducted a lot of their PR stuff. And so when they dropped it today, it necessarily did not shock me, because I kind of, figured that, there'll be a need to continue this game through the next gen, because it will be quite difficult to drop a Division 3 in 2021. It won't be impossible, but it'll be a difficult task, because there's still so much that we're learning, in regard to all the new game releases and stuff. And there's still a lot that the developers are most likely extracting from the experience that they've actually garnered from the Division 2, from the players anyways. And then another thing too that really came, to mind, and somebody in one of my streams just recently pointed this out to me, and I hadn't paid attention to this, and they said that the Division 2 actually sold 10 million copies for the game's release, and this is without Warlords of New York, when the game actually went for $2. That's how I was able to purchase the game multiple copies of the game. I think I have about 4 or 5 copies of the game. And because of that sale, it was nice to be able to buy them on all different platforms at that time. And so that was really cool to get myself a copy of a game that I do cover and I do like. But one of the really interesting things was at 10 million copies, we did the math and said, what if all players at an average bought the game at about $30 or $40? And, we are looking at perhaps a sale price of, total sales, bringing in that Massive made of about $300 million. Now, you can argue that, these games cost a lot of money to make. The Division 1, there's an article that said it took $2,500 to make a trash can. I can also argue that a lot of the assets that were probably made in Division 1 did not need to be remade for the Division 2, but just imported. So if we had to go that way, there will most likely have been some savings. So I think the Division 2 most likely was not a failure regarding sales, if you get what I mean. Now, I can also attest to the fact that the Ubisoft boss said that the Division 2 did not meet their sales expectations. And we were discussing this in the stream, and it was really interesting because a lot of times CEOs and, companies may have expectations that surpass specific sale numbers, and they may not meet those numbers. But it didn't mean that the Division was a failure. But we did know, though, that Ghost Recon Breakpoint did not do well. And looking at that, it made some sense to me to say, I don't think they're going to put an IP that is able to bring in hundreds of millions of dollars to the side. Ladies and gentlemen, we've now moved away from the gaming side to the business side. And I can understand that there is a certain dissatisfaction in the community. But if you really want to evaluate the game, you will have to most likely take away that emotional aspect and look from the top and say, oh, okay, so this is what they're probably trying to do. However it may rub off emotionally, or, however it may rub off regarding the transactional nature, it doesn't really bear weight to exactly what it is that, the developers and Massive seem to be working towards. Because not only did they say, we're going to get you to Summit by September 22nd of this month, they also said we're going to also allow for backward compatibility for next gen, which is most likely in November. And then they also teased a holiday event that's going to be bringing Fei Lao very fast. In very short window, they basically extended this game's relevance all the way through December. I'd been having some banter with members of the community who've told me that the Division is no longer relevant. And I've kind of, thought about it and said, but, the Division's relevance is not necessarily based on participation on, the internet, not on YouTube, not on Twitch. It is based on the fact that players are still playing the game. And even if 99% of the people who initially bought the Division copies, I'm talking the very first people who bought the game, if 99% of them have dropped the game, then we still have a total of 100,000 players. And this is not to talk of the people who bought Warlords of New York. So at 100,000 players, at the more conservative aspect, I still think there are sufficient numbers of players that are playing the game. In fact, in chat, we were taking even some surveys as I was streaming, talking to some of my, audience members that have been longtime audience members that live in South America. And they even told me that the dark zone there is actually crazy and annoyingly crowded because people are playing on those parts and on those servers. So I think if we evaluate the Division's player base, we cannot evaluate it based on specific parameters. We just have to ask questions around the general community at large. And once we start to ask questions outside of our regions, outside of our zones, it is not, a surprise that people are still playing this game in huge numbers. Now, yes, you will find instances where people say, I can't get people to matchmake for me, to matchmake for challenging, to matchmake for heroic. You also have to understand that the constraint on the game right now has a majority of the player base playing the legendary content, the hardest stuff in the game, and that's all they play pretty much. So if you're matchmaking for maybe, the invaded missions and some other missions, you may not get people playing them, but that doesn't mean that people aren't playing. So you have a well-progressed player base at the 6, 7, 8, 9, 1,000 hour mark, and they are all playing the highest level PvE content. And so if you think about all of this, it brings me to the point that says this franchise is not going to just be thrown in the corner. This development team, this company, seem like they really want to continue to make this game or make versions of this game down the line. Now, how they're going to do that will really require some creative thinking. Will really require for them to continue, as I've said in the past, to butter the community by bringing content, working to make sure the content gets to the point that the community likes it. And when the community is happy, they're going to drop a Division 3 announcement, in my honest opinion. People are saying, so this is their tactic, and I'm here telling you this is what I think, in my opinion anyways, that their tactic is. So I'm not necessarily at the point where I'm going to say the Division is actually over with. That's not possible yet. I mean, it's a $300 million at the least. I'm talking like base level. That is, if everybody paid $30 for the game, we're talking $300 million. If everybody paid $40 on average for the game, we have just jumped an extra $100 million. And any gaming or developing firm that is not going to harness a multi-$100 million sales possibility game is absolutely joking in 2020, because the landscape is about to get very competitive. And so you really want to hold on to the community and the fan base that you have. Think about it. I think sometimes we look at this game and we look at ourselves, but we fail to sometimes realize that every day the game continues to add people that are in the community. And at the same time, every day the game continues to lose people. Now, we don't know at what rate, but that influx continues to, in my opinion, maybe balance out the shortening and the over crowding of the game, and puts it at a place where they can at least know that they have a very strong audience to sell another Division game to. And then we also have the talk about Avatar, which I don't necessarily think will factor right now into all of this. But to be very frank with you guys, I really think from the business angle, this game and this franchise is here to stay for a while. It's going to be challenging, but the Division 2 and the Division franchise is going to be harnessing a lot of those, opportunities that are out there. They may do it slowly. They may do it at a pace that drives a lot of the community members mad and drive them absolutely, up the wall and bunkers. But I really do think that just for the sake of the fact that they want to make money, they're going to drop a product. The problem that we have is, are they going to drop a better product than what we already have so far? I guess that's where the conversation needs to be, rather than a short-sighted aspect of looking at things and saying, oh, just because I hit matchmake for freaking Airspace Museum and nobody joined, the game is dead. That's not the way I would recommend that we evaluate the game. We got to evaluate it from multiple angles and multiple fronts. And so far, my evaluation is telling me that we're going to be seeing content and relevance of this game for the next few months. So this is just my opinion on all of this, and I'm sure you got the announcement in this video somewhere, but I needed to rant this out because I felt like right now in the community, we're just in a place where everybody's wondering, is this game going good? Is this game going bad? But to be very frank with you, as I've said multiple times, from what I'm seeing, I don't see this game's franchise going anywhere. In fact, I see the Division 2 having one more year of DLC expansion, and then we're going to lead into a Division 3. But who knows? I know nothing, and I may be wrong, and if I'm wrong, please make sure you come back to this video and tell me that I was wrong. Anyways, I want to hear your thoughts in the comment section nonetheless. You know me, I always read your comments. I reply to them once I have a chance, if I have a chance, and I want to just continue to have this conversation with you guys in the community. Thank you so much for your time and audience, and hopefully we'll see in another video. Peace.